slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement.
Everything I do so instinctive and so passionate. Every word I move so descriptive like an adjective. I got a vendetta against people who patented being negative when you should be getting after it. I got facts over tracks, this and that. Spitting slow, spitting fast, I could roast, I could gas. Think I'm okay at last, but I don't know if that can erase all the past. And the pettiness, a reflection of the emptiness. Hilarious, you think you're worth my time, you're delirious. Mysterious, because you hide behind a fake exterior. Inferior, you know I'll always be a bit superior. Get off of me, this ain't no humble brag. I want you to hear words, you can say them back. I want you to feel free from the chains at last, and to believe in what you got, it was built to last, yeah.
Now that I've been put through hell, I never got anyone's help. I had to do it all myself.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement.
Gonna learn the consequence of being incompetent. Mental health is confidence, dreams and some modestness. I'm not here to save the day, that's for you to take away. I could play a million mind games, but instead I say something not illogical, something that is topical. Rub it on and watch it go, make yourself unstoppable. Dreams are irresponsible, but they're always possible. If you just believe, you could be so remarkable.
Thoughts in my head, a collage and they spread. I'll be great one day, going off of my meds. No, I'm not giving up, no, I'm not giving in. I will make it to the top, taking off in the wind. I gotta make it, I'm saving every day to taste it. I'm patient, but my mind, it can hardly take it. I'm chasing a dream that I've had for several ages. A vacant, modern kingdom for the taking.
Now that I've been put through hell, I never got anyone's help. I had to do it all myself.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up.
And the villain meet. It's a train wreck waiting to happen. Sparks fly, and 99% of the time, punches get thrown. What do I do? Seeking advice. Urgent. By the time we followed Miss Vance into the Gilded Spoon, I still hadn't come up with a foolproof plan to keep her from running into the heroine. We got to our private room, and there was no sign of the heroine. I breathed a sigh of relief and started trying to recall the novel's plot points. Unfortunately, I'd mostly skimmed the book, only slowing down for a few lines here and there. It wasn't nearly enough. Crash. The sharp sound slammed me back to reality. I looked up, it was happening. The heroine, Jessica Reed, was serving a tranche of soup, and just as she reached the table, she twisted her ankle, sending the soup lurching dangerously close to Miss Vance. I'm so sorry, so sorry. Jessica's face went pale with terror. She apologized profusely, stumbling backward like a startled deer. A thought sparked in my mind, and fragments of the plot began to connect. If I remembered correctly, the male lead, Ethan Cole, was also in a restaurant right now. You wench. How dare you startle Miss Vance? One of the other goons saw his chance to suck up. He lunged forward like a starved wolf, raising an arm thicker than Jessica's thigh to slap her. Stop! A furious shout echoed through the room like a thunderclap. The next thing I knew, the goon was flying through the air like a broken kite, kicked clean across the room. I watched him twitching on the floor, blood trickling from his mouth, and thought, you should be thanking your lucky stars that slap didn't land. If it had, you'd be coughing up a lot more than blood. Ethan, a sweet cry came from our very own Miss Vance. The moment she saw Ethan Cole, her eyes lit up. She rushed toward him without a second glance at her fallen flunky. The guy on the floor was probably thinking, "Boss, a little help here? Acknowledgement? Anything. Isabel, why do you keep harassing Jesse?" Ethan demanded, shielding Jessica behind him and glaring at Isabel Vance. "That's not what happened, it was..." Isabel started to explain, but Ethan cut her off with a wave of his hand. "Enough. You've disappointed me more than I could say." He scoffed, then took Jessica's hand and stormed out of the room without looking back. Isabel stood frozen, as if struck by lightning. A deep hatred instantly filled her eyes, and her small fists clenched so tightly her knuckles turned white. All of that hatred was aimed squarely at Jessica Reed. It was all that woman's fault for stealing her Ethan. Witnessing this scene, the knot in my stomach finally loosened. At the same time, a theory started forming in my head. After Jessica spilled the soup, her first reaction wasn't to clean it up, but to retreat like a frightened rabbit. That move was suspicious. It was almost as if she knew Ethan was there and would intervene just in time. If so, she not only avoided getting hurt, but also earned Ethan's sympathy and made him even more disgusted with Isabel, a perfect trifecta. Or maybe I was overthinking it. Maybe she just backed off because she knew what a temper Miss Vance had. After the incident, Isabel was like a zombie. Her appetite was gone, and she went straight home. Back at the governor's mansion, we ran into the governor's wife, Isabel's mother. Under her mother's concerned questioning, the dam finally broke, and Isabel burst into tears in her mother's arms. After hearing the story, the governor's wife slammed her hand on the table and vowed to get justice for her daughter. A lowly servant girl, that's all she is. I'll send someone to teach her a lesson. My face twitched. Oh, for God's sake, I thought, you're just handing the hero free experience points. This kind of move would never actually kill the heroine. It would only make Ethan loathe Isabel even more, and by extension everything about Sterling City. That's how these stories always went. The more Ethan hated her, the more obsessed Isabel would become until she did something reckless to get rid of Jessica and ended up getting taken down by the two of them working together. Then the governor would try to get revenge, but he'd be too wary of Ethan's background to go all out. So he'd just send his men to their doom, one by one, like a conga line to the slaughterhouse. But I didn't dare say a word. One wrong move, and I'd be diced up and fed to the hounds. Once Isabel had calmed down a bit, she returned to her courtyard. As a master-level practitioner, eating was more of a pastime for her than a necessity, so back at her courtyard, she didn't have a meal. She just reclined on a chaise lounge while a maid served her enchanted berries. "You four? 3 of you. Do you have any ideas? How can I get rid of Jessica Reed without Ethan finding out?" Isabel glanced carelessly at her servants standing 15 feet away, correcting herself when she remembered one of us had been taken away for medical treatment. It suddenly hit me. If I had been the one who got hurt, even if I was crippled, as long as I was alive, I could have been reassigned. I wouldn't have to be on call for her 24/7. Man, I really missed that opportunity. Well, facing her question, I glanced at the other 2 guys. They were practically vibrating with eagerness. I felt a wave of exhaustion. Of course, for them, this was a golden opportunity. The heroine was poor from a single-parent home with only a blacksmith father. If they came up with a clever plan to eliminate Jessica, they'd be handsomely rewarded, which would be a huge boost to their own power progression. Isn't that why they willingly signed those contracts to become servants in the first place? Sure enough, one of the resident schemers spoke up. "Miss Vance, what if we arrange to have her father captured? Then we can order her not to tell Mr. Cole or her father dies. That way, she'll be completely at your mercy." I thought about it. That sounded vaguely familiar from a novel. The details were fuzzy, but I was pretty sure Ethan found out anyway and came to rescue him. And then Miss Vance, being the completely boy-crazy girl she was, actually handed the father over. Isabel nodded slightly. She'd had a similar idea herself. The father and daughter were inseparable. It was a solid plan. Seeing that things were about to be decided, I couldn't stop myself. "Wait," I called out. You have a better idea?" Isabel's beautiful eyes turned to me. My mind was spinning. I was panicking internally, but I couldn't think of anything. I wanted to slap myself. Her gaze was already turning cold. I had no choice but to push forward. "I'm just saying. What if, hypothetically, Jessica is stubborn? What if the moment she realizes her father is missing, the first thing she does is tell Mr. Cole? If he comes here demanding his release, what would you do then, Miss Vance?" "She wouldn't dare. Isabel shot up, her eyebrows knitted in anger. But she would. That's the whole point. I could feel sweat beading on my forehead, but I forced myself to continue. It's always better to be safe than sorry. If Mr. Cole found out you did something like that, wouldn't he be completely repulsed by you? Isabel froze. The servant had a point. I can't let Ethan be disgusted with me. Do you have a better idea then? She pressed. Forgive me, Miss Vance, but I don't. I lowered my head, terrified, not daring to move. Useless, she huffed, sinking back in her chair with a pout. I let out a silent sigh of relief and went back to brainstorming my own survival plan. Speaking of which, Jessica Reed was a real piece of work. Or maybe her father was. I remembered a part where Ethan offered to help them leave the city, but the father refused, saying he didn't want to abandon his ancestral home. Making a decision like that, knowing full well you've made an enemy of the governor's family, that wasn't just weird, it was certifiably insane. It had to be a plot device to keep the heroine in constant perils so she could level up. Thinking about it, a lot of novels use these kinds of contrived tropes. I couldn't really blame the author. Trying to change the main character's path was a dead end. Maybe I could find a breakthrough with Miss Vance herself. But how to deprogram her obsessive, boy-crazy mindset? That was the million-dollar question. Come on, brain, think faster. Thankfully, Miss Vance didn't mention going out again that day. As night fell, I returned to my quarters. I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. My life was on the line here. I had to come up with a plan. If all else failed, the next time there was a confrontation, I'd just have to jump in front of the male lead and take the hit. I need to get my hands on some enchanted armor first. The next morning I stared at my colleague who, despite coughing up blood yesterday, was back at his post, looking as chipper as ever. I was speechless. Seriously, dude, they pay you a few dozen mana crystal a month. Is it really worth dying for? Then the unexpected happened. The governor's wife actually went ahead and had Jessica's father kidnapped. Like mother, like daughter, I guess. What followed was exactly like the plot of the novel. Before Isabel could even make a move, Jessica showed up at the mansion with Ethan in tow. With Ethan's powerful family backing him, even the governor had to back down and release the man. After all, the Vance family had acted unscrupulously, and Ethan's status was nothing to scoff at. What choice did they have? Isabel could only watch as Ethan shot her a look of pure disgust before leaving with Jessica and her father. She retreated to her room and locked the door. Soon after, we heard the sound of things smashing inside. I sighed. I hated being so powerless. I had managed to talk Isabel out of the kidnapping plan, but I had no standing to advise the governor herself. When darkness fell, one of the maids finally coaxed Isabel into opening the door. They began carrying out the broken furniture and decor. A tattered book landed at my feet. I quickly bent down to pick it up and caught a glimpse of a page. I froze. It was a romance novel. Though I only saw a few words, I could make out phrases like childhood sweethearts and flirtatious banter. Later that night, after Isabel had gone to sleep, I lay in my own bed, wide awake. From what I could tell, Miss Vance was just a spoiled brat. She hadn't fully descended into the irredeemable villainess she was in the book. An idea struck me, so brilliant it was almost blinding. Since she liked reading romance novels, why don't I write some for her? She's completely obsessed with this guy, right? So I'll write stories about that. I'll focus on the male lead's inner thoughts, his absolute disgust for the clingy, obsessed girl. As the saying goes, a simp will simp until they have nothing left to simp for. Miss Vance, I muttered to the ceiling. I'll give you a push in the right direction. The rest is up to you. I jumped out of bed and hurried out. Thankfully, Sterling was a city that never slept, its streets still bright with enchanted lamps and bustling with activity. I easily found a shop that sold blank notebooks and pens. Back in my room, I started writing, channeling every clique-filled story I'd ever skimmed. I cranked out several. The next day, sporting dark circles that would make a panda jealous, I clutched a manuscript to my chest and went to work. I waited quietly in the courtyard outside Miss Vance's room. Before long, she came out. The dark cloud hanging over her beautiful face told me her mood was still foul. She sat down on the chaise lounge under a tree and listlessly picked at a fruit. Seeing my chance, I took a deep breath, walked forward and presented the manuscript. Miss Vance, I said respectfully, I found this story that seemed interesting. I thought you might like to take a look. Everyone else froze, staring at me as if to say, Dude, you've got a death wish. Isabel was in no mood for it, but when her eyes fell on the title, she paused. The Ruthless Governor fell for a plain Jane like me. What kind of weird title is that? The weird title is what caught my eye, I said, my head bowed, feeling as guilty as a thief. My eyes darted around nervously. Fine, let me see it, she said. A maid quickly took the manuscript and handed it to her. Isabel opened to the first page, glanced at it, then turned to the second and the third. As she got more engrossed, a few of the maids crept closer, their curiosity piqued. The title was just too enticing. After all, what were they if not plain Janes? In the time it takes to burn an incense stick, she had torn through the whole thing. She closed the book and asked, a hint of curiosity in her voice. That was interesting. Are there more? My face twitched. Are you kidding me, my lady? You're supposed to critique the idiot male lead. He had a beautiful, rich fiancée, but fell for some average-looking commoner. Failing that, at least complain about the villainess. There are so many men in the world. Why does she have to be obsessed with the hero? But seeing a flicker of life return to her eyes gave me a little comfort. Yes, Miss Vance, there are, I said. I have 9 more stories just like this one back in my room. Isabel's eyes lit up. Go get them for me now. Yes, ma'am. I immediately retreated and returned with the rest of the manuscripts. Don't underestimate a girl from the slums. I can read the Archimedes' mind. The true heiress is back, and I'll make the whole family kick her out. Why are all these titles so strange? Isabel grumbled, but she eagerly started on the first one. The manuscripts I had pulled an all-nighter to write were devoured in a single morning. After finishing the last one, she savored it for a moment, then asked, "Are there more?" I wanted to slap myself again. "No, Miss Vance, that's all of them," I said, slowly, remembering my cover story. I quickly added, "I bought every story of this type that the shop had." Without a second thought, she ordered, "Where did you buy them? Go ask if they have any more. If they do, buy them all right away." I bowed and left. What else could I do? I'll play along for now and then spend another night writing. So I went out, bought a crate of blank notebooks, wandered around the city for a few hours, and then returned. As I stepped into the courtyard, I saw the governor's wife sitting with her daughter, both of them smiling as they discussed the plots of my stories. When Isabel saw me, she immediately asked, "Did you get them?" I hurried forward, bowed to the governor's wife, and then answered, "Isabel, Miss Vance, I found the author. He said he'll have more ready by tomorrow." A flicker of disappointment crossed her face, but she said, "Fine. You don't need to report for duty here tomorrow. Go and supervise him. Tell him to write faster and bring the stories back to me as soon as they're done. As you command." I was ecstatic. I couldn't believe my luck. A whole day off to catch up on sleep. The governor's wife then asked, "You're the one who bought these stories?" "Yes, my lady," I replied respectfully. She took out a small pouch. "This is a reward for you. Take some of it and give it to the author. Tell him to write quickly, but make sure the quality doesn't suffer." "Thank you for your generosity, my lady." I accepted the pouch, feeling better and better about my decision. After her mother left, Isabel, wanting someone to discuss the plots with, had her 2 maids read the stories as well. Soon the 3 of them were chattering away, analyzing the clever plot twists and the seamless conspiracies. I didn't know how long these stories would keep her distracted, but I hoped she would eventually understand that affection is a two-way street. Obsessing over a one-sided crush would only lead to a bad end. That night I was back at it, writing furiously. I'd already used up a lot of tropes, and it was hard not to repeat myself. After finishing the first story, I decided to write a reincarnation novel for the second one. I just hoped she would be receptive to the concept. The plot was pretty satisfying, so it should be fine. The next morning, sunlight streamed through my window. I deliberately stalled, waiting until almost noon before rushing back with the 5 newly completed manuscripts. "Reborn, I'm not chasing you, so why are you chasing me? Just the title sounds interesting." Isabel's eyes sparkled as she eagerly began to read. Seeing her reaction, I breathed a sigh of relief. It looked like she'd be open to transmigration stories in the future too. An idea for a new story began to form in my mind. A low-level adept from a magical world accidentally transported to a world with only ordinary humans begins his legendary rise to power. In the days that followed, writing became a joy. There's an incredible sense of accomplishment that comes from seeing something you created being so highly valued. Isabel rarely went out anymore, and even when she did, it was just for a short walk before she returned. As for Ethan Cole and Jessica Reed, they were completely forgotten. Half a month flew by. I felt like my well of inspiration had run dry. I couldn't squeeze out a single new plot no matter how hard I tried. My body felt completely drained. At times like this, I desperately wished I had a system, even one that just let me read novels. Then I could just copy. Draw inspiration from them. I wouldn't be in such a tight spot. With no other options, I decided to start writing a long-form serial novel. The good news was, Isabel loved it. The bad news was, she was demanding new chapters more and more urgently. I often thought to myself that if it weren't for my adept-level constitution, I would have collapsed from exhaustion long ago. "Miss Vance, here is today's installment," I said, handing her the manuscript I'd stayed up all night to finish. "Thank you," she said, taking it with a huge smile. But after she finished reading, her expression changed in a flash. She slammed her hand on the table. "How could you end on a cliffhanger again?" I wiped a thin layer of sweat from my forehead. It was a classic storytelling device. What did she expect? And I'd hit my word count for the day. What more could she want? "Tell me who the author is right now. I'm going to find him myself," she exclaimed, standing up as if to leave. "Miss Vance, please calm down," I quickly interjected. A good story doesn't just appear out of thin air. Each plot point requires a great deal of thought. It's a miracle he can write this much. If you scare him off and he gets writer's block, you won't get any more story at all. Wouldn't that be a terrible loss? She paused, considering my words. It made sense. She sat back down. "These mana crystals are for him." Isabel generously produced a pouch containing 100 neatly stacked mana crystals. Damn, that was more than a regular servant's salary for 2 months. "You got it," I said, snatching the pouch and making a swift exit. A little while later, a sudden thought struck Isabel. "Oh no," she thought. "I forgot to tell him not to pocket the crystals for himself." She immediately ordered one of the nearby servants. "Where does 17 live? Take me there now." With that, she led the remaining 3 servants and 2 maids on a grand procession toward a small room in a corner of the estate. 17. Isabel had come looking for a fight, but when she threw open the door, she froze. The room was a mess, littered with crumpled and torn pages of manuscripts. She bent down and picked up a book that had been ripped in half. She flipped through a few pages and stopped cold. This was the very serial she was obsessed with. The plot was similar, but the writing was much rougher, the story less compelling. It was clearly a discarded draft. He wrote all of this himself? Isabel's face was a mask of disbelief. Calming herself, she thought back. It all made sense now. 17's growing exhaustion. The fact that she'd never seen any of these stories for sale in the city's markets. The only thing she couldn't understand was why he had hidden it from her. Isabel's eyes flickered. With a wave of her hand, she collected all the discarded drafts into a storage pouch and strode out of the room. 16, you stay here. When 17 gets back, bring him to me immediately. I, of course, was completely oblivious to the fact that my cover was blown. I was out enjoying a lavish meal, replenishing my energy. After eating my fill, I leisurely strolled back to the mansion. As soon as I reached my room, I saw 16 waiting. A muscle in my eye started to twitch uncontrollably. "There you are. Let's go. Miss Vance is waiting for you," 16 said, already walking toward Isabel's courtyard. My stomach dropped. I glanced through my open door and saw that all my rough drafts were gone. I was so screwed. From now on, as long as there was breath in my body, I'd probably be forced to write until I dropped. My heart pounding, I followed 16 into the courtyard and saw Isabel sitting there, her face set like stone. She picked up one of my drafts and slapped it on the table. 17, she said, her voice like ice. "Do you have anything to say for yourself?" I quickly bowed. "I'm sorry, Miss Vance," I said, my voice thick with guilt. "I never meant to deceive you." "Then why did you?" she pressed. There was no point in lying anymore. I confessed everything. "That day, I saw you were in a bad mood, and I happened to know you enjoy reading stories. So I took a chance and wrote one myself. I was afraid you wouldn't like it, so I never admitted it was me. After that, I just never found the right time to tell you." Hearing this, her expression softened slightly, but then her tone shifted again. "Well, I'm still in a bad mood. So as punishment, you will double your writing output for today." I groaned internally, just as I'd expected. Yes, Miss Vance, I sighed. Then, like flipping a switch, her face broke into a grin. How are you so good at this? You've written so many amazing stories. She looked exactly like a CEO who had just successfully squeezed more work out of an employee. Exploiter, I thought, but on the outside I remained respectful. I've always wanted to write, but never had the chance. These ideas have been building up in my head for a long time. Isabel's eyes lit up. Does that mean you have other stories in there besides this one? Yes, I blurted out without thinking. I knew it was the only way to keep her hooked, to make sure she completely forgot about bothering Ethan and Jessica. Then tell it to me directly, she said, her voice buzzing with excitement. I looked up, startled. I hadn't expected that request. Seeing my reaction, Isabel's brow furrowed slightly. You can't, she asked softly. There was no threat in her voice. Instead, it was filled with the quiet disappointment of someone whose hopes had just been dashed. Was this the same arrogant Miss Vance? How was I supposed to resist this sudden change in character? Without much hesitation, I nodded. I can. That's great. Come here, sit next to me and tell me the story. She beamed, her happiness overflowing. She had no idea that her behavior was mirroring a character from one of the very stories she was obsessed with. Through this back and forth, she was slowly starting to realize that you can't get what you want through force. A gentler, softer approach could be far more effective. Steeling myself, I walked over. After a moment of frantic brainstorming, I decided to do a massive rewrite of a classic, The Odyssey, perfectly adapted to fit the magic and lore of this world. It was a massive hit. Not only was Isabel captivated, but the other servants standing nearby were also completely drawn in, listening with rapt attention. Isabel would frequently interrupt with questions, her eyes shining with curiosity. The next few days were much easier. I was still busy telling stories by day and writing them by night. But this new rhythm seemed to have cured Isabel of her need to demand more chapters. She even started to mimic the sweetly manipulative heroines from the stories, using their tactics on her father, the governor, to get what she wanted. The governor had always doted on his daughter, completely spoiling her. He stood no chance against her new charmingly persistent approach. Within a few rounds, he'd surrender, showering her with all sorts of gifts. Isabel's good fortune was a great thing for me as well, and I received many generous rewards. Life at the governor's mansion had become peaceful and prosperous, but as they say, the calm never lasts. Jessica Reed's father had a run of bad luck and immediately assumed Isabel was behind it. He accidentally let this slip to Ethan Cole, and now Ethan was here with his entourage, furiously demanding an explanation. I wanted to scream. All my hard work these past few weeks, and I still couldn't prevent this stupid, fated confrontation between the heroine and the villainess. Was Isabel destined to die? Was the Vance family doomed to fall? Watching Ethan blindly defend Jessica, constantly accusing Isabel, filled me with rage. I desperately wanted to go up there and give him a piece of my mind, but my status was too low. One wrong word, and I could lose my life. I had to swallow my anger. Ethan Cole, you shut your mouth. Isabel's sharp rebuke cut through the tense atmosphere like a thunderclap. I jolted, turning to look at her in shock. I wasn't the only one. Everyone in the room stared at her, especially the governor and his wife, their faces masks of astonishment. They had always been polite to Ethan, partly because of his family's influence, but mostly for their daughter's sake. They didn't want to see her heartbroken. After all, she and Ethan had grown up together. She had called him by his first name for over a decade. In the past, whenever she threw a tantrum, it was always directed at someone else. In front of Ethan, she was always gentle and sweet. Who would have thought that today she would completely break character, shouting and cutting him off mid-sentence? Even Ethan was stunned into silence, momentarily forgetting what he was about to say. Isabel wasn't finished. Where do you get the insane confidence to think I would waste my time targeting some nobody waitress for you? She said coldly. You think just because I was friendly I was in love with you? Get over yourself. A guy with your mediocre talent and inflated ego isn't worth the effort it would take to bully someone. Why don't you find a mirror? The only thing you have going for you is your rich dad. You can't hold a candle to the senior disciples at the Obsidian Academy. Now get out of my sight. From now on, you two can do whatever you want. The words tumbled out in a torrent. The villainess had gone full savage, leaving Ethan utterly speechless. With that, she turned on her heel and walked away. As she passed me, she glanced in my direction. I discreetly gave her a thumbs up. She saw it, and the corner of her mouth lifted into a triumphant smirk. With a sway of her hips, she sashayed back to her courtyard. The governor turned to Ethan, his smile still in place, but his tone firm. "Mr. Cole, I suggest you investigate matters thoroughly. Once you have your facts straight, I expect you to return and apologize to my daughter. For now, please leave." Ethan stumbled out of the mansion in a daze, his mind still reeling. Was that sharp-tongued, dismissive woman really the same girl he remembered? The girl who used to light up whenever she saw him, who would scheme and plot just to get a moment of his attention. But now, Jessica saw his devastated expression and her heart ached. "Ethan, I'm so sorry," she whispered. "This is all my fault. You're only in this position because of me." That seemed to snap him out of it. "Jesse, don't say that," he said quickly. "This has nothing to do with you. Don't worry. I'll go back and have my uncle's men look into this. If it really was the Van Cess pulling strings, I swear I won't let it go. I'll be back to settle the score for you and for me." Isabel settled back onto her chaise lounge, a smile playing on her lips that hadn't faded since the confrontation. She was about to say something, then hesitated, a look of uncertainty on her face. I watched her, wondering if she was starting to regret her outburst. But then she proceeded to send the other 3 servants on a series of increasingly ridiculous errands. Once they were gone, she leaned in conspiratorially. "So, how did I do?" I paused, picking my words. Her epic takedown of Ethan. A genuine smile spread across my face. "Miss Vance, that was absolutely savage." Her grin widened. "Yeah," she chuckled. Then she seemed to remember something. "Hey, what's your name?" "It's 17, miss," I answered automatically. She shook her head. "No, I mean your real name." I realized that everyone bound by contract to the mansion used their assigned number. I was a bit confused as to why she was asking, but I answered truthfully. "My name is Leo Miller." Her eyes lit up. "Stop with the formal miss stuff, it sounds so distant. From now on, I'm calling you Leo. It has a nice ring to it." The 2 maids standing nearby gasped, their faces filled with envy. In the governor's mansion, to be called by your real name by one of the family was a massive step up in status. "Chloe, go tell Mr. Henderson about this," Isabel said to one of the maids before turning back to me with a sunny smile. "Come on, Leo, sit over here and tell me more of the story." "You got it," I said, not hesitating as I walked over and took a seat. A little later, the other 3 servants returned with an assortment of pastries. When they walked in and saw me sitting with Isabel, they were stunned, but after a moment it seemed to make sense to them. Everyone had seen how her attitude towards me had changed recently. The haughty, demanding boss was gone, replaced by someone much warmer and friendlier. Time passed, and another half a month went by. I was deep in my writing one day when I heard the door creak open. I glanced back, saw it was Isabel, and went back to my work. "Not done yet?" she asked softly, walking over and casually draping an arm over my shoulder, completely ignoring the stunned looks from the maids and servants behind her. "Almost," I said. If I tilted my head just slightly, I could see her fair, rosy cheek. So close I could feel her breath. "It had better be a happy story this time," she warned playfully, making a fist. "If you sneak in any tragic twists, you'll have to answer to me." I couldn't help but chuckle. She had a point. A couple of days ago, I'd written a story that started out incredibly sweet, but took a nosedive into a tragedy at the end. She cried her eyes out, her face all red and puffy. It was a heart-wrenching sight I really didn't want to repeat. Isabel walked around to the other side of the desk and sat down, propping her chin on her hands. "My dad told me Jessica Reed finally left the city. Apparently, she was accepted into the Silverwood Institute." My pen paused. I was surprised for a second, but then it made sense in the logic of the original novel. Without the villainess constantly pushing her, the heroine had no catalyst for growth. She couldn't transform through adversity. Without that growth, she would never be good enough to get into the prestigious Obsidian Academy. Silverwood was a world away from Obsidian. I had no idea if Jessica could still become the powerful figure she was meant to be, but none of that mattered to me anymore. From this point on, this side of the story would fade from the main plot. The villainess I had worked so hard to protect was finally safe. 10 years flowed by like a quiet stream. "Leo, look at that. It's beautiful." Today, I was with Isabel in the capital city of Ethelgrad. The city was holding a grand festival. The streets were adorned with colorful lanterns and banners, filled with a joyous, bustling crowd. Isabel clung to my arm like an excited child, her eyes sparkling. I looked at her and couldn't help but smile. The once proud and aloof young miss had become more and more playful over the years, as if time had stolen her arrogance. Just then, my eyes caught a familiar figure. "What's wrong?" Isabel noticed my expression and followed my gaze. She froze. At a stall not far away, Ethan Cole was hawking his wares. The once dashing, elegant young master was now disheveled and worn. All his former grace was gone, replaced by the weary look of someone who had seen better days. The sight triggered a memory of a plot point I had almost completely forgotten. In the original story, Ethan's family merchant guild was supposed to suffer a catastrophic disaster. It was the heroine, Jessica Reed, who was supposed to step in and save him. But looking at him now, it was clear that the Jessica who had gone to the Silverwood Institute didn't have the power to change his fate. "Let's go," Isabel said, a complicated emotion flickering in her eyes. The urge to go over and gloat was there, but she quickly suppressed it. She was committed to her new, sweeter persona now. That kind of behavior was beneath her. Understood. I nodded and led her away in another direction. "Leo, I want one of those." Her attention was quickly captured by a street food vendor, and she was back to her charming, pleading self. "I don't know," I said, feigning reluctance. "You always take one bite and make me finish the rest." "No, I really want it. Please, Leo, darling." Her soft voice dragged out the last word, making it impossible to refuse. All right, we'll get one." I laughed, surrendering completely. Our figures slowly disappeared into the bustling crowd, leaving behind nothing but the faint sound of laughter, which soon faded into the lively hum of the city.